Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. And we are being live streamed. Citizens, if you are watching, there is a way for you to call in or text or send in your comments. We'll get them, and if we do get them, we will respond to them later in the session. They won't be forgotten. And I see that we have no citizens right now down here. So, Mayor, thank you for attending our meeting. This being the first committee to determine salaries. It's obviously a new process for the city. Several years from now, it'll be an old process, but right now it's still a new process, and we're still getting our feet wet and learning how to do this. So I have blocked out up to an hour. If you want to talk that long, I have assembled some questions, and I think you all probably all have assembled some questions that we want to ask. But I had blocked out at least 25 minutes or so for you to speak. Or less or more, whatever you want to use, okay? We were told that you had a 5 o'clock commitment, so.
Well, you had a hold on your calendar.
You should have just said yes.
I just carved you in, I carved this meeting into your calendar.
Okay.
Where there was an opening.
Wouldn't be the first time, but I'm not worried about the 5 o'clock deadline. So.
Okay, well, the table is yours.
I've had 3 other things come in the last 2 minutes.
Oh, no, you got nothing on your calendar, do you?
Yeah. Well, let me begin, first of all, by saying thank you for serving on a citizens committee for the city of Lewiston. I think those are very important. I think the work that citizens do is key to our proper function of government. And so you get the first shot at this. Compensation Review Committee, just briefly some background. If Amy shared it with you, please stop me, but I recently served in the Idaho legislature, and the state of Idaho has a Compensation Review Committee that looks at legislator salaries and per diem and things like that every 2 years. And we have to set those at least 75 days before the election. And so after Lewiston changed its form of government to a strong mayor, we had to go back and rewrite Chapter 2, which is really the laws of the city, the governing laws of the city. And this subject was brought up by me to city council members to consider if they wanted to add something like that to our city code, where we'd have a citizens review committee to come in and play a role in setting compensation for the commissioners and for the council members and for the mayor. And so they agreed to do that. And so it made it into our code, and that's where we are today. So let me just share a few things with you, and then it would probably be more beneficial for me to answer any questions you may have, but let me just share a couple things with you. If you go to our city code, if you have not done that, you can go online and look at that under Article 2 of Chapter 2, and it tells you right there under Section 2-11 qualifications of the mayor, Section 2-22 compensation, which is the current compensation and benefits program, along with the Compensation Review Committee. Section 213, which is the powers and duties. And so let me just focus on that very briefly, because under Section A, and this is pertinent to your discussion, it says faithful discharge of office. The mayor shall devote so much of the mayor's time to the duties of the office of mayor as an efficient and faithful discharge thereof may require. So the mayor could put in an hour a week, the mayor could put in 40 hours a week or more. It has to do with efficient and faithful discharge of the duties of the office. And under B, it tells you what the powers and the duties are. And every one of these listed, there's 8 of them, all are citation of Idaho code. So that's where the mayor gets most of his power. And it also includes any additional authority that the city council wants to give to the mayor. So the council can do that. They can't trump state law. They couldn't take away from state law, but they could add some other things to that, you know. So where those two would conflict, then state law would prevail. And then it also lists under 215 powers and duties, it talks about mayor approval of ordinances. So the mayor has the authority to veto an ordinance. Ordinances are laws of the city. Resolutions are more like policy. So I couldn't veto a resolution, but I certainly could veto an ordinance. And then the council has the power to override that. So that should sound very familiar. It's much like state government or federal government, where we have at those levels 3 branches of government: judicial, legislative, and executive. Here at the city, we really have 2 branches of government: the executive and the legislative. So I'm in the executive role, council's in the legislative role. They make the laws and I sign them or veto them, and then they can override them if they want. So that's really how that works. I do get to vote, but not on all ties. So I do have that ability to break ties. It just depends on what the issue is and whether or not I have that authority. And that's all spelled out too. Not here, but we have that all spelled out in some guiding documents from our legal office. And then D, under that section 213, issuance of subpoenas. That's something new that we added also. City council has the authority to subpoena. I don't know if you ever knew that, Councilor, but you do. And so the city of Moscow, for example, has delegated that authority to the mayor. And so after this rewrite, the Lewiston City Council decided to empower the mayor to subpoena. And so one of the reasons for doing that is for efficiency. You know, it's a lot easier to have the mayor issue a subpoena than trying to get the council together and vote on these things or find time to do it or whatever. So that's really the bulk of what the duties are, is identified in our city code, city ordinances, and then I printed a couple of other things from the Idaho statutes, not all of them, just a couple of them that I share with you if you haven't seen them. First one is administrative official, the mayor. This is an Idaho statute 50-602, except as provided in sections 50-801 through 50-812, and that's a city manager form of government, which we no longer have, so that doesn't apply. The mayor shall be the chief administrative official of the city, preside over the meetings of the city council, and determine the order of business, subject to such rules as the council may prescribe. Have a vote only when the council is equally divided, but again, not in all circumstances. Have the superintendent control of all of the officers and affairs of the city. Preserve order and take care that the ordinance of the city and provisions of this act are complied with and enforced. So that's pretty simple, what state law says. 50-601, general powers the mayor shall have and exercise such powers, prerogatives, and authority as is conferred by the laws of the state of Idaho or as may be conferred upon him by the city council, and shall have the power to administer oaths and shall sign all contracts and conveyances in the name of and on behalf of the city. So that really identifies what the power of the mayor's office is. And then one other thing I want to share with you, because this is where the mayor could probably try to exert his influence over the council and try to drive policy a little bit, which is part of the role of the mayor. Again, we have 2 separate branches of government, so there should be a healthy friction between those 2. You know, one doesn't walk over the top of the other. There should be some friction, and that's okay, because it leads to good debate, good discussion, hopefully good decisions. But, and I have not done this yet, but you know, I may, in my 2nd year here, the mayor shall from time to time communicate to the city council such information and recommend such measures as, in his opinion, may tend to the improvement of the finances, the protection, the health, the security, the ornament, the comfort, and the general welfare and prosperity of the city. So you might think of that as a state and city address. Another way is basically just to write the council a letter for their consideration. You know, get ahead of them a little bit if you want to try to influence the vote. Here's what I think you need to do as a council on something that I feel is very healthy, needed, important for the city in terms of you know, again, finances, budgets, you know, and other things like that. So that's a power that I have, but it's really just trying to influence, you know, to exert some authority over it. They don't have to pay attention to that. So with that, why don't I, Mr. Chairman, stand for any questions, and I brought some examples of things that I've been working on if that comes into play.
Excellent. Well, why don't I start with, I have several questions, but why don't I start with one, and then we'll work our way around and keep working our way around, and so we all get equal time to, and Dan knows I'm never short of questions, so. So I had about 3 or 4 of them. I'm gonna jump right down to the bottom of one of them, because you just, that last, what you just talked about is interesting. So, do you have an understanding of the direction of the council?
Do I have an understanding of the direction of the council?
Yeah, what direction the council wants to go in? Do you have an understanding of that?
No.
Okay. Next question?
So I'm more interested in what your daily activities look like. So what, you get up, come to work, what's your day like?
Okay. You want me to brag a little bit?
Tell me what,
It could be a brag or a cry.
I get here between 5:30 and 6 in the morning. So I was here at 5:30 this morning, 5:30 yesterday. Some days I show up at 6:30, but I try to be here by 6. And so one thing that I've learned in this position that I was not as prepared for is that I spend an incredible amount of time on personnel issues and legal issues. And it's not to say that I wasn't prepared for that, but it's just amazing how much time it does take to wade through those. And so, most days, when I get here, I try to spend the first couple of hours getting some writing done, performance evaluations, maybe reading lawsuits, responding to emails, writing letters, those kind of things. During the day, I could have meetings with citizens, staff, businesses, other government agencies. I've had pretty good run with the governor's office, especially with this reservoir failure. So I, not weekly, but at least every other week, I'm in contact with someone in his office and others on issues that impact city government, trying to lobby for the city, to help us in a lot of ways. I spend time with staff in a lot of different capacities. Sometimes it's just to go in and ask questions, gather information, or seek understanding if I don't understand something in a process, or maybe a finance thing or a budget thing, especially. Sometimes I go to the field with staff because I want to learn more about their job, but just kind of bring a fresh set of eyes to it to try to understand why it may be taking us longer than I think it should sometimes to get things done, and or to, find ways to make improvements in the process. And so I think we've made a good effort there, and I think we've learned a few things. Mondays, of course, we have council meetings, first, second, and fourth Mondays. Sometimes I do have other evening and weekend meetings. Tomorrow night, CEDA's annual meeting, so I go to that, as representing the city as the mayor. On Sunday, Friday, let's just start with Friday. Friday, I'm going to head to the Portland area, and we're going to actively be recruiting someone for our next fire chief. So, and that's somewhat confidential, so I wouldn't share that outside the room here, but
It's on TV.
or if you're watching from television, just delete that comment. So, true story though, and but we have a couple of folks that we're interested in, so that takes up some time. And then on Sunday, we're going to, American Cruise Lines is going to christen a new ship here in town. And I've been asked to speak on behalf of the city for that. So, I get invited to things like that. If I had one complaint, so that I don't take up all the time answering one question, is that I have yet to get out and just be the mayor that I want to be. You know what I mean? The ribbon cuttings, maybe they're not coming, I've made it to the schools a few times, probably half a dozen to a dozen times, to give awards, checks, from Readers Becoming Leaders, things like that, through the Association Idaho Cities, other volunteer type things at the schools. So I've been able to do some of those kind of things, speak at the, you know, at the veterans memorials and things like that. I get to do some of that, but, you know, really, I think I'd like to try to dedicate part of my day to, you know, if you will, doing nothing, you know? It's like all he does is run around and drink pop with Bob Blakey, you know? But there's some good that can come out of that, you know, if you're kind of putting a face to the city. So, yeah, so a little bit of everything. I'm sure I didn't cover it all, but, you know, maybe we'll get to another question. That would be a typical day, something like that.
So just to clarify, you mentioned that you usually show up here at 5:30. What time do you usually go home? On an average, just like
Yeah,
a
about 5.
5?
Yeah, I'm usually here at 5, yeah. I just feel guilty if I leave before then. It doesn't matter if I get here at 5:30. Nobody sees me get here at 5:30, but I feel bad if I leave before 5. But I'm gonna get over that.
That
Yeah.
seems a little bit more than just a full-time
Yeah.
job.
Well, it is. So let me just comment on that quickly and then go through some more comments. So so when I first decided to get into this business, I was in the legislature and I was asked by some folks in town if I would consider running for mayor, and I said, well, I'll think about it. And so I contacted a good friend of mine, Mayor of Idaho Falls, Rebecca Casper, and her city attorney, Randy Fife, who was the city attorney in Moscow. And I asked them that question, hey, what do you think of a strong mayor form of government? And they both said they thought it was a better form of government. At the time, there were only 3 manager forms of government in the state of Idaho, Lewiston being one, Twin Falls, and McCall. And so there are now 2. And so they thought, no, we think it's a better form, and here's why. Especially Randy Fife, who's worked under both. You know, I really respected his input. But the very first thing they cautioned me on was they said, you have to manage your span of control. And I will admit right now that my span of control is everything. And it's not because I don't know how to say no to some things. I just haven't got to the point yet in this whole process of change where I've been ready to try to identify what that role would be if there was an assistant, right? To try to narrow that scope down, that control down. So I thought initially when I came in, I was going to start out with an assistant right away. And if you remember, Gary Riedner, the supervisor of the city of Moscow, retired on Friday. I got sworn in on Monday. I almost called him, said, Gary, what are you doing Monday? You know, but decided against that. And the reason why is because it's been necessary for me, I think, to get down in the trenches, get my hands a little bit dirty, learn as much as I could about the positions, the employees, you know, strengths and weaknesses, the employees' strengths and weaknesses in the positions, the organization of the city, these kind of things. We went through a couple of changes, you know, reorganizations early on. And so it might have been a little bit too early to bring somebody in and tell them here's what this position's all about, without really knowing what it was going to be. And so that's kind of transitioned a little bit into my hesitancy to hire someone just for the sake of hiring one, because I don't know why I need to go through someone to talk to Amy, you know, and that kind of adds a little bit of inefficiency. So I'm going to have to find that right balance. You know, it goes back to remember this first thing about the faithful discharge of the office, right? How much time you have to spend there. And when I read it earlier. So I have to, I put in for a half-time position in last year's budget, didn't get around to it, that's fine. We did hire a new community development director, so we're still making some changes at the city. But if I have one thing to look at, it's that, you know, to see whether we need to do that or not. Every city does it a little bit differently. Some have city administrators, some have city supervisors, some have, you know, teams that work this way, you know, these kind of things. And that's kind of the direction that I've gone in the first years, to try to flatten the organization out a little bit, you know, and really let the directors be directors, so.
Are you done? Okay. You're answering a lot of my questions that I have and touching base with all of them. So I'm going to be careful how I don't want to bombard you with the same question over. But you are touching about continuity and continue and a plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this being the first year that we've done this committee, we don't have an evaluation tool, and nor do we have anything to evaluate. That's why he asked you to come. I would hope in the future, that, well, it'd be 2 years from now, the next time a committee like this meets to determine the salary for the mayor and the council, there is an evaluation tool in place that can look at the 5-year plan, which I believe you got a consultant you're working on right now again, aren't you?
We adopted the community strategic plan, we just adopted
Yeah,
the
strategic
city
plan.
strategic plan, and then we're doing a rewrite of the comprehensive.
Right,
plan.
which are forms which you can easily evaluate.
Yeah,
because
policy statements, yep.
they have goals, they have what direction the city wants to go, and where does it want to be. So the tool is there. It's a matter, I think, in the future of somehow being able to wrap evaluation around it. I personally think just looking at what other cities are paying is a very ineffective way to determine one's salary. That's my personal opinion. Our data is really old, too. And no fault, that's just what was available to us at the time. But contingency, what happens, Dan does not want to run 2 years from now. There's an election, there's a new mayor. And do you see your form, how you run your government today, how you see yourself, either as a mayor or a CEO? Are you a CEO or are you a manager? You know, and they have different roles. CEO oversees the big picture from 50,000, the manager's down at 5,000. It sounds to me right now that you're at the 5,000 foot level.
I do both.
Yeah. Is that an effective form of government? Is that an effective way to run the city?
We're doing pretty good right now. We're going to find out. You know, this
But-
is first year of a transition.
But here's my question though. Dan decides not to run 2 years from now, and he has not put another level of administration below him for continuity's sake to continue whatever plans were put in place. The history of the government goes out the door when, and you have department heads. How do you plan to address that if Dan chooses not to run again in the future? What can we put in place to help the new mayor?
Well, I can only do what I can do, and I'm only accountable for the next 4 years. So we're going to have an election this November, and 3 new councilors are going to come on board. They could change the entire direction of the city, right? So when you first asked your question about if I know the council plan, I just said no. It's a yes or no question. And I said no because I'm not sure they know what it is, right? And that's okay. And this is why the mayor can send a message. And I think there's some areas where I need to maybe, lead or guide in some respects. And the reason why I say is because I'm here full time. I get my hands dirty, and counselors have got other jobs and their families, and they don't devote as much time to this. And so sometimes they're not as up to speed, don't have all the information, or maybe they don't have a long-term view of some of the decisions that they're making. So this is where the mayor can help that. And I do that through phone calls and emails with them all the time. We're talking all the time. Some counselors take more advantage of it than others. But I just try to provide them factual information. I don't try to tell them how to think or how to vote, because I have ways that I can do this. That separation, if I need to veto, I will, or if I need to send a letter or do other things. So that starts this fall with the next election, where depending on who comes in, the strategic plan could change, the direction could change, because the council really has all the power. They make the laws, not I. I control the agenda, and they can override that, right? At the agenda, it says, agenda items where somebody can add something to the next agenda. So to give you an example, early on, when we were dealing with the dams issue, I was asked by a counselor, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, to put something on the following Monday's agenda, and I said, I won't do that. The answer is no. And I wasn't trying to be tough or hard to get along with. The answer is no, I'm not going to do it. It's not helpful to the process right now. And so I'm not sure the council understood that, but part of that is that they need to understand when we have council meetings, there's a reason for having agenda topics on the agenda. If there's something you want to talk about, this is your chance to say, I move to put this topic on the May 1st work session. There's a second, we discuss it, and it gets put on there or it doesn't. Because otherwise, the council member might say, hey, you know, on the May 1st work session, I'd like you to add this to the agenda. If it's something I'm not interested in, it ain't going on there. That's the power I have as mayor. That's my vote. So if you disagree with me, you put it on there and then bring it up. And so I think as the council starts to understand a little bit more, you know, if somebody in this room ever thinks about running for council, understand what your role is and your power as a council person, just like the subpoena. There's a lot of things councils can do, city council members can do, that they don't exercise. And so, so for this council, we have some good council members, but, you know, I think we have good council. I think we're working well together for the most part. But it's up to them to kind of gel a little bit and find the direction that they want to go, or state your position and be firm about it and try to fight for some things, and we just don't see a lot of that. So that's going to start this fall. But to answer your question about continuity, right now we have 3 positions at the City of Lewiston that have protection. City Finance Director, Treasurer, City Clerk, and the City Attorney. So I have the authority to remove any other employee of the city. Under the current personnel policy manual, I can do that with cause. Idaho is an at-will state, which somebody does HR here, right?
Yes.
And, but we are for cause in our current policy. That could change with the next council, but currently it's for cause. And so if I wanted to replace the city treasurer, it would take 4 council members to agree with me to do that, or a unanimous vote of the council, all 6 members, to change out the city treasurer. And so those 3 positions, which are really probably the most important positions in the city, and I say that from a standpoint of, like, in the Idaho legislature, the only thing we're required to do is set a budget. That's all we're required to do when we go to Boise in January. But we always get off onto other things, right? And we get a budget passed too. But if we did nothing else but pass the budget, we've met our constitutional obligations. So same thing here. When you think about the finance director, we have to set a budget, we have to do those things. So you don't like, you know, the finance director's budget policies, you say, I want to get rid of this person. You can try, but there's a high bar to do that, including the mayor. City attorney is supposed to give unbiased advice. Doesn't work for the mayor, doesn't work for the council, you know, works for the city. And the city clerk, who is the keeper of the records, and supposed to be very clear about that and record everything accurately. So if we were to look at putting any other positions in there as appointed positions, I would have to come to the council. The council would have to debate that and change the city code to do that. They can certainly do that. But there's always risks with doing that too, because if you open those positions back up to appointment, then it would mean that those positions would have to be appointed. So if you currently have somebody in a director position and you change that to an appointed position, they may not be appointed. So there's always risk.
Darlene?
If you can pass on this one, I'll get around next time.
Okay. Another question?
Yeah, this one pertains to your salary. Do you find that your salary currently is adequate for your living expenses and other things like that?
Well, yeah, I did not get into this job for salary. I feel like the work that I'm doing is a lot. And, you know, for comparison purposes, you know, we probably eliminated in the neighborhood of $400 to a little bit more than that, $1,000 in salary, you know, on an equivalent basis when we reorganized, you know, and went through the change of government. You add some kind of a city something position to that, then you take some of that away. So I don't complain about the money that I make. You know, I know that some cities pay more, some cities pay less. I'm not focused on that. I'm not too concerned about that. I think the important thing with setting a salary is, as Councilor Blakey brought up, you do your best to recruit good talent. And elections have consequences, you know, so you get what you get. But so that's one way to maybe try to do that. Yeah. So the benefits, so I take the sick leave, which I'm eligible for, and the PERSI, the retirement. I don't get to accumulate sick leave or vacation, stuff like that. Other employees would get to accumulate. I don't have an expense account. I have a credit card, a city credit card. I've used it one time since I got here, and that was to buy a tank of gas. So when I go out for coffee, I buy the coffee. If I go out for lunch, I buy the lunch, you know, so.
And why is that? Why don't you use a,
Because it's a personal decision, yeah. So I've taken many of the employees out to lunches and coffees and stuff, just to talk to them, you know, and try to reach out and kind of walk the line. That's important to do that too. I think it's really important with the change of government, you know, I'm sensitive to, and we know the people in the community, Bob, who are gonna come up and say, well, how's that coffee tasting, Mr. Mayor? You know, because the city buys everything. And they say, well, no, we don't do that. In fact, we've changed some of our purchasing policy at the city in other departments where we don't do that anymore. So, you know, I think it's changing the culture a little bit to do that. Now, CETA tomorrow night, yes, city's buying my dinner ticket to go to CETA, you know. I go to AIC, city pays for that kind of stuff.
if you're a Rotary member, you would expect the city to pay your
Yeah.
Rotary.
If I'm a Rotary member?
If you were, you would expect the city to pay your Rotary dues.
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
No, ended that practice when I got hired.
Oh, you did, for all the members,
I did. No,
Oh.
that is done. We don't do that anymore.
and that's your prerogative
Yep.
as mayor.
Yep, so it's all ended. We just have very, very few circumstances where the city will pay for a meal or a coffee or anything.
Okay.
So, and it's been well received, I think, and understood.
Emily, the HR manager?
Do you have a preference, or, like you mentioned something about a part-time position as an assistant, or don't know what the title would be.
Yeah.
Are you thinking that is something you would like, so you can do more of the ribbon cuttings and how you view mayor, or?
Yeah, so, I mean, this kind of goes back to the continuity question. So, you know, I've thought about, so like when I came on board, I'm not sure that any of the directors had a performance evaluation in the last 5 years. One person did for sure, and that was a 2-year-old evaluation. And I think performance evaluations are important. And so I've been doing those. I'm a couple weeks behind on some, but I get them done. I think they're very important to do that. And so I've talked about maybe trying to get some of these, 360 evaluations going, where maybe 3 of the directors will evaluate each other, this 3 will evaluate each other, this 3, you know what I mean, type thing. They become teams, if you will, and they hold each other accountable. And maybe trying to put something like that in place as a substitute. It's a little bit kind of like what Moscow does, where they have, supervise, whatever they call them, over different groups, where they can kind of hold everyone accountable type thing. And if something like that would work, then I wouldn't see the need for an assistant. Somebody else might feel like they don't want to do the amount of work that I do, and would like to have more control, over the staff that way. I don't know that if there were somebody who was going to head up the admin side, if you will, then the city may not need a full-time mayor, I mean, it's just that simple. That's kind of what we had. And so we've changed that. So, but again, a different mayor could do that if that's what they wanted. So it's really out of your control, it's out of my control to do that. I just have chosen not to go that route.
I missed something. Out of whose control?
This committee's control,
We don't
and out of my control.
Oh, you're in control if you want to hire an administrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next person, if they want to organize, they have all authority to organize how they'd like to do that, you know, so.
Right. Emily, did I answer your question? The
Yeah,
answer
so I don't, that's kind of where it's at, but I guess what I'm more focused on is output, you know? And if we can, you know, meet the goals that we've identified in our strategic plan. First of all, we finally adopted our vision statement, City of Opportunity, which is something I think Councilor Blakey worked on when he was there, because that's been around for 3 years. But that's the direction we're headed. So under that, we've got these goals and objectives, you know, and these tasks that we're trying to complete, and those things can change, right? All plans can change, and so that's where we're at doing that, and I just have not, I have not made the next step, the jump to go that. I've talked to a couple of people about the possibility, a couple of them. I don't think staff wants those people here, and I'm smart enough to know that. Good people, smart people, but I just don't know that that's the right fit for the city, you know, if we went that direction, so. Yeah.
Well, you answered part of my one question already, on the fact that you do have an evaluation system for your department heads in place. I didn't know if you did or did not yet. So you do, and so, excellent. It needs to be, and if you're doing it more often than once every 3-4 years, that's even better. But my question is, what are you doing, or what is the council doing, both you and the council, to keep good staff, especially in the face of current inflation?
Well, so it's not my goal to compress wages up. I'm not going to do that. So you've got somebody making $20 an hour and we only pay 15, we can't hire anybody, so let's pay them 18, you know, compress those wages, you know, so then the people here think, well, then we should get a raise too, you know, now pretty soon it's a race to the top. That's just not a good business model. And I think we have a very competitive pay plan. I think we have great benefits here. I think we have great staff. We have a great work environment. We're very flexible and understanding. Sometimes things come up in life, you know. But you do have a work schedule and you're expected to work it. We have some flexibility with our 980 schedule, for example, where somebody can have every other Friday off. Not something I'm a fan of, but you know, we do offer that. Some work 410 if they can do that. I read every performance evaluation that's done in this city. Every one of them, every written evaluation comes across my desk and I read it and I study them and I look for ideas in there. Staff have a lot of things. I'd like to have more training opportunity. I'd like to have a travel opportunity. We need more equipment. I'm working internet crimes against children, you know, I see in an evaluation, we need a new computer for ICAC. I'm like, ICAC? You know, I figure it out. Internet crimes against children. So, so I think what we can do, and we will do, is that we'll provide, as a city, we'll provide those opportunities to get training. Travel is a privilege, you know, allow folks to travel. You know, maybe work on some professional credentialing, things like that. And those are perks or benefits that, you know, if we have the money, the resources, then we'll do that. And so when I talk about reading the evaluations, not only do I read them, but I send people an email and I try to pull stuff out of the evaluation and talk to them about that. Say, I really appreciate that, I understand this or whatever. So at least they know that somebody's reading these things. I get a lot of emails back from folks like, I didn't know anybody read these things. You know, so they do value that. It's that whole business of walking the line. And so in part when I say getting out and being the mayor, that includes getting out and getting a shovel and working with the crew, you know what I mean? Because it means a lot to them if you do that. Amy won't let me balance her ledger for her, but that's probably a good idea. You know, I said, well, I'm done. She can still go back and double check it. I couldn't do it anyway. Or Claire. But you know, I go out with the streets crew, I go out with the parks crew, ride along with the police, ride along with the fire department. You know, try to learn about the different positions and jobs and just let people know that, you know, I'm interested and I'm concerned and thank them for the job that they're doing. But at some point, this is the package that we have, and if somebody is not happy, then I wish them well. They can go somewhere else. So a good example of that would be when we hire folks at the executive level, you know, I will not offer a position over a 5 to begin with. You know, we've had some that have asked for more than that. You're going to have to go somewhere else. I'm not going to do that.
Over a 5.
Step 5.
Oh, step 5.
10-step pay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to pay for that experience. You know, that's expected. But you're not going to start at 10. You know, just, I'm not going to do that. And so, and some people have turned jobs down in the city, and that's fine. And we go out and we find the right person, and it works for us. So, but that said, you know that the city currently offers, you know, for all employees, 2 increases a year. You get a merit increase and a cost of living increase. So it's very generous.
Darlene?
So, kind of what I'm getting from you is there really is no set job description other than what's in Idaho code.
For the mayor.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So you're, in 4 years, 2 years, next person come in, it could, the job description could completely change.
Idaho code tells you what, you can't take this away from the mayor because that's set in state
Right,
law.
but that's it. There's no set,
Mhm.
this mayor needs to go out and learn the job, and like you said, you were doing, going out and working in the field type thing. So is there some way of changing that to where there is a more cut and dry, these are things that we expect from the mayor? Or is it just that person has free control, basically, as long as they're within there?
You go to the polls and you vote.
Right.
Because everybody makes campaign promises, you know, and some they can fill, some they can't fill. But nobody has, it's an elected office, and nobody has any authority over that position. And like I said, they can change some things, you know, and I read that too. The city council can do that, but you couldn't take away anything that was given to that position under state code.
But you couldn't add anything either, that's up to,
In city ordinance, yeah, council has the authority to do that, to make some changes to, you know, city business, if you will.
so city council could vote on it or bring it up and make those changes.
But not change the powers or the duties of the mayor.
You can make a suggestion, recommendation, but that's all. Kevin?
I don't have anything to go around.
I don't either.
If you had to grade yourself so far, let's use an A through F system.
A through F?
A through F, pluses and minuses. We'll give you a wide.
I've got one of each, yeah.
So, well, no, I'm not gonna, overall, as a mayor, talking to the citizen on the street, how would you grade yourself performance-wise?
Yeah.
Saying, how am I doing overall in my job? Overall.
Yeah.
In specific areas, you shine, we all shine in specific areas.
No, I think, you know, I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna say is average above average. I think I've been above average from the standpoint that I've really made a commitment to the city, and I probably do more than what people even see. You know, a good example is this weekend, you know. This just happens to be when that person's available, so we're gonna go over there and interview them and work with them Friday and Saturday, come back, and Sunday gonna meet with the cruise line. So my days are not necessarily Monday through Friday. I get calls at home, too, from the police and the fire and other people. They know where I live, they have my phone number. But I approached this job just like I did as a legislator. So I always said that if somebody wrote me a letter, hand-wrote me a letter, I hand-wrote them a letter back. You email me, I email them back. You call me, I call you back. And I've done that in this job too, and I think that's new for some people. They don't understand that. Sometimes they just kind of bark at you, you know. So always up for the challenge. Somebody says, hey, you know, why don't you come and meet us, you know, Q&A. I've taken everybody up on it, and they have not called me back. just happens again over taxes, and irrigation is the next thing. I got my first complaint at 6 or 7 yesterday morning, and the guy was cursing me because of my salary. You're more concerned about your salary than fixing the reservoir, you know, and I was like, okay.
You may want to quickly put some paint on your house that can be easily
Yeah.
washed off. I still have
Yeah.
egg stains on my house. So,
But I say that because I know, I've been in public service long enough to know that there are not many people that are willing to make that level of commitment to the people. I'm not saying that I'm the smartest person, I'm not, and I don't do everything right, and I won't. And I have said that from day one when I've met with staff at the leadership. I said, you know, we're going this direction, and I will get it wrong, I'll do some things I shouldn't, or I'm gonna say something, you know, whatever, you just need to call me out and tell me, but we're going this direction, we're not gonna not do things again, and you could probably pick on all the departments, and, you know, Amy's sitting here, but in finance, we made a lot of changes in finance, and we're doing a lot of great things in finance, and I don't get to take credit for that on an A, B, C, D schedule, because it's really the people you hire to do that. We got great staff, but I'm smart enough to know when I need to, you know, lead or get out of the way type thing. And so, you know.
I said this to the group last week, and I'll say it again. You don't have to be the greatest football coach in it. What you do have to have is great assistants under you, who you then promote. And when they leave, you know you've done a good job. And when you have to fire them, you have to fire them. But good coaches don't always are the best coaches. They just know who to hire the right people.
That's right.
To work under them. Question about us, this committee. Okay, so in reading the bylaws of this committee, you know, we have to have a recommendation here probably by the next meeting. So that's something we'll have to discuss here. And it's got to be June 1st. But the way I read this, and I'm not promoting that this committee stays intact, but I understand that we serve through December 31st. Doesn't technically terminate once we make a recommendation to the council. We serve at the pleasure of the city council till the 31st of December. Practicality is we will dissolve after we make our recommendation and make our presentation. But having said that, do you think there's value in this committee in the future, maybe not this body, but the next body, a meeting sooner, having access to an evaluation tool, or talking to the council ahead of time, so there's more information and maybe less what you just did right now? I sometimes refer to as show and tell. Here's what I've done. This is who I am. It's something more material. Do you have thoughts on how we might construct this?
Well, no, well, we didn't get to show and tell yet. I brought a list of things I want to talk about. There's only maybe 30, 35. It should
We're going to run out of time for
be
that.
about 2 minutes each. And I don't get credit for all of these things, but we have a lot of good people. So, so I guess what I would say to that is what I said when we started about citizen committees. You know, I think they're very important. It's great. Some cities don't have the same opportunities, and Lewiston always has, you know, and they need to be staffed properly. So you have staff support here, and the council members that are appointed to those committees, they need to actively participate because they signed up for them, and they need to give some feedback to the rest of the council at city council meetings. Here's what this committee's doing. So we know whether or not it's worth keeping the committee or whether anybody cares. And so this is the problem with government. And, you know, a lot of times it's just easier to sit back and complain, you know, rather than to get involved. And same thing too, when somebody's elected, takes office, whether you're the mayor or city council member, I hope you did that for the right reasons, and that you're going to put the time into it, you know, get your hands dirty, learn, don't rely on staff necessarily, you know, just tell you, you know, what things are, go investigate the things yourself, and come back with some informed decisions, or at least participate in an informed decision-making process. So So I think the committees are important. They have a valuable role in the community. And the committees themselves sometimes are only going to be as effective as they want to be. You know, there are some committees that are fully staffed but maybe don't do a whole lot, and others that are, at least have a quorum that do a lot of work, you know. I look at committees like Disability Advisory Commission, you know, I don't know that I could sit through those meetings all the time, but they do a great job, you know. They're very informed and they work hard, things like that. So I think it's important, but it's up to the members of the committee, the citizenry, to make that committee what they want to make it.
Does this group have any other questions for the mayor? Tony, no? Is the mayor having further questions for us?
No, I don't. I would just encourage you to be bold, you know, be purposeful in what your recommendations are so that the council can hear this from a citizens group. This is your public speaking to you. This is how we view our government. This is our assessment. It might be the first time, that's fine. But kind of set that bar where you think it needs to be set and, you know, communicate, I think, to all the elected folks, you know, that there's an accountability standard, there's an expectation, you know, the responsibilities that you elected to take on. And this is based on these things. This is how we make these kind of recommendations, because you're representing the community too. You know, so if this committee felt like, well, we don't really think our elected government is that important to us, then, you know, don't put a lot of time into it. Yeah, and so then the next time around, somebody else will have that shot, you know. It's a challenge, we know that.
Well, it's tough to find enough people who want to be on this.
Yeah, but no, I really appreciate you wanting to be here and to serve on this, so,
All right.
yeah.
You are welcome to stay, but if we are done, we'll close that
I
session.
think I'll go find out what my 5 o'clock
Go
is.
find me 5 o'clock.
See if I can-
Pretty sure it was over at Riverport.
No, it's not River. I can leave this if anybody wants these to look at just for fun, but it's not Riverport. Riverport's when Chief Michael Buss retires here in a couple weeks. His
I know, I'm gonna miss that party.
over at Riverport. And thank you,
Thank you.
Amy and Claire, and everyone, you know, for being here, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll have an opportunity for discussion about this in our active agenda, I'm sorry. We asked our questions, we got those. Presentation, Amy, you have some more information? Do you have additional information
Well-
for us?
Is this the same as response to questions asked at last meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I'll give you an example. I was just doing a little bit of homework on my own, and, you know, on here it says population of Coeur d'Alene, 44,000. Well, it's 89 today.
A lot of data.
Yeah.
Not that is a big deal, but it really, and it says the population of Lewiston, 32. Well, we're really close to that still, maybe 35.
So I will tell you that this information I got from the city clerk's office, and they pulled it from the AIC.
Right.
Because they keep it updated. So what was in today's packet
Mhm.
is a condensed version of what you received at your last meeting. And
There was a packet sent today?
it was sent yesterday, I
Oh.
believe.
Okay.
And so it just came straight from the AIC information, but it's interesting just your comment on Coeur d'Alene, because they only have Coeur d'Alene at 54,000.
Mhm.
So maybe this isn't that accurate. But I'll have to ask, or maybe she just got the wrong number to me on that one. Because the rest of them seem pretty, you know, where you would expect them to be, like Twin Falls had grown, and the growth pattern seemed where you would expect it based off Idaho's growth pattern overall. So, but like I said, that's where that information came from, the updated, and I can give you mine when I'm done. The updated populations. Then the number of employees also came from the AIC. I went through and I tried to just do a research of each city to determine services that they provide or what would be specifically different to Lewiston. all the notes regarding fire and EMS, I'm really confident in that information because I utilized Chief Michael Buck to confirm my research. So like, for example, Twin Falls, I have on here that they have a fire department, but a separate EMS service. So that's provided by a valley-wide paramedic company. But other than that, Twin Falls is the same as the city. When I went into their website, they had, the same departments within their public work, water, with wastewater, so no separate water districts. Post Falls, they use a library network. So I just went through and itemized the things where there were separate districts so that you could see that. So if you take a look at Eagle, for example, like a lot of their services are provided by regional districts and services. They're in that, the hub of Ada County, and they have the highway district there that does all their street maintenance for them. They've got an EMS service that is shared throughout Ada County and the fire district there as well. And even their police, they have a police department and it is staffed with police officers, but they contract with the Ada County Sheriff's Office for enhanced law enforcement services. So this was just to give you guys some more information on the specific cities that you requested.
Thank you.
But that Crowley number doesn't look right. It seems like it would be larger.
They're hiding something.
So,
Yeah.
well, it could just be that maybe it got typed in as an error too.
It's not that big.
But I think we could easily get that.
Oh,
Another thing I tried to do is Twin Falls was one of the, no, it shows 55 on the,
As a 21.
as a 21 on the internet. It just seems bigger to us because of all the,
Maybe I
you know,
Googled it, they
Housing developments and stuff.
well, like, they just have so many suburbs blending in.
Yeah.
Another comment I have on that is Twin Falls, we weren't provided a salary for their city manager or so they tried to get it when they did this research originally and they wanted it to go through a public records request. I did a public records request on Monday afternoon, but I hadn't received that information back yet. I'm not certain I did it correctly because during this meeting I went and I did another one. And their form's a little complicated, so I may not have followed it all the way through. So I will share that with you next meeting. When I was looking up to see if by chance I could find it on their website, I found out that they had a deputy city manager, and I don't believe that was on your original handout either. So I'm trying to get the compensation for both those positions for you.
Perfect. No, this is, I did take a peek at this, thank you for printing it out though, so I had some questions on that. So any questions here for Amy? Yeah.
I would also be interested in knowing what the median household income is in each of those areas.
Think we can get that?
Census Bureau should have some of it. I was
Yeah, I
able to
don't know
pull
if
some
they'll
up.
have it on a city level or it might be based kind of regional, but we can look.
I think on the census, you can get a basic general of
Yeah.
Income, so income and poverty, median household income in 2021. So I was able to pull up some of them, comparing Post Falls, Moscow, and Lewiston. And it had, it's 65,000 for Post Falls, and 49,000 for Moscow, and 60,000 for Lewiston. So the U.S. Census does have some of that information.
You say 60,000 for those?
That is surprising.
That seems a little high.
Yeah, it does.
That's household.
Okay, household, not per person, household.
That's household.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense.
It also gives you persons in poverty percent as well on those.
Exactly. Good, that's good information to know. Any other questions from Amy and her information that she obtained for us. No questions? Amy, thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Do you still want that medium, do you want that for, let me rephrase that. Are there any specific cities outside of the 3 that you looked up that we'd like to see? There's a lot of cities and a lot of information to get.
Yeah, on there, I believe, we're talking about Twin Falls. You were trying to get more of the information on Twin Falls. Or was it Post Falls?
We could look it up for the condensed list we have if you
Okay.
wanted. Okay.
Yeah, just so we have an idea, because basically we're getting what the salary is for most of them. If they're part-time, full-time employees, it'd be interesting to know what the median household income is in each of those places. Obviously, you'd expect more in Ada County than a couple other places, so.
Okay.
Yeah, some of those, like Eagles, are fairly, I mean, even though the city's been there a while, it's really grown and that's where a lot of the new build in that Ada County is happening.
Eagle's gonna get a lot bigger if they manage to annex in that whole subdivision that's up that road on heading up Horseshoe Bend.
Yeah.
So those are big areas. Okay, thank you very, very much. Okay, on our active agenda, you all had a chance to review the minutes from last week. Are there any corrections to the minutes from last week?
There is a section where I think I
But I
highlighted that.
corrected,
You
I
did
put it
okay.
back, yeah.
All right. Okay, so if there is no, if there are no corrections, I will make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Nay? None. Okay, minutes are accepted. Thank you very much. This is a hard group to take minutes for, especially, I can't wait till we got down for Dan Johnson next time.
Do my best.
That was a good job, okay. All right, now we gotta get down to the last, basically what we're looking at here now is B, C, and D. What are we gonna do? Response to questions asked last week. Oh, I think we, actually, Amy, you did that, right? That was the action agreement that you just did. Okay, review of committee purpose. Again, taking the information that we have, we don't have an evaluation tool really to look at. Dan personally graded himself out. I think Dan was very, very transparent, and he works a long, hard day. Nobody makes him work a long, hard day. He is self-driven. That's the way he's always been. You can see, I think, from the discussion, he's battling with, do I want help? Do I not want help? Should I have an assistant? Do I not want an assistant? I'm not ready to make that decision yet. And it's not that is not actually in our job description to tell him. We can make a recommendation at the city council level, and that'll be something we'll discuss. So, anybody, I'll just leave this right open now to some thoughts. Let me rephrase this. I would prefer that we have no recommendation for a salary made at this meeting right now, because we are missing a member of this committee. I'd like for this to be a full committee before someone makes a motion for a proposed salary. So at this point, I'd like it for it to be discussion, in which we can do. Are we in agreement? Can we be in agreement with that? I would, if it was in a perfect world, I would like to see us wrap this up maybe next week, or no later than the week after, or if we need to have a couple of meetings next week to wrap this up. There's no reason to drag this out for right up to the 17th. In fact, yeah, I don't, in my work. But I'm open, again, I'm just the chair. I'm respond and listen to what you all and your feedback, what you want. But I did hear, what did I hear? What did I hear the mayor tell me? He's a hard-working individual, and I've known that since I've known Dan for years. Hard-working. When he went down to Boise, he left no rocks unturned. He's very analytical, and you saw that. He's a very analytical numbers guy. And he displayed that in his years down in Boise in state government. I didn't always agree with Dan in state government, but Dan, I felt, from a legislator, we got an A+ job from him as a legislator. He may not always voted the way you wanted him to vote, but he was his own man. Dan's never been told what to do. And I think that's pretty evident right here in the city government. He is gonna tell department heads, it sounds like to me, this is the ship I want, and this is how I wanna run it. The question I have is, and again, it goes back to, boy, the level of what he wants to do is extreme. He's asking an awful lot of himself. You're an HR person. Did you get that feeling? What did you get?
It seems like his duties and responsibilities that he's made for himself does not equate to the current compensation.
Correct.
That he is putting in a lot of time and effort to make this what he wants, which, yes, part of that is on him, but.
Yeah, exactly. It is on him. No one's telling him to come at 6:30 in the morning. As an elected official, he can leave at noon, and as a mayor, he can set whatever schedule he wanted to. And the only time really anybody gets input in that is every 4 years when we have an election. And then his performance can be reviewed by the voters. I agree with you to some extent. I am concerned that if we were to raise the level of salary to say maybe a Caldwell level, which is crazy expensive, but that person's acting like a CEO and he's acting kind of like Dan is. I see Dan not as a CEO. Well, he's a hybrid. I see him as a manager / CEO, but maybe more manager than CEO. And that's how he's chose to go. A concern I have is if we raise the salary too high, will that make him better? Will that improve his performance?
I think it's gonna set the bar for next time. You can always go higher, but you can't go lower.
Yeah. I think Dan said it really, explained it to himself once he said, we have new employees who want a level 5 entry, but we're only going to, a level 10, but we're only going to give them level 5. And oh well, if we can't go any further, that's as far as we can go. Amy, help me here on government. In 2 years, Dan's up for re-election.
He just started his second year, so the recommendation you would make would would apply to his third year.
Right, third and
And
fourth.
so that would cover his third and fourth year.
At that point in time, at an election, there's an election, say Dan doesn't run. The council resets the salary.
Yeah, that would be my question. How long is this
Yeah.
recommendation gonna be in effect?
Council could only reset the salary within what the state code allows, so that's 75-day period before an election. And they would have to do that before they would know the results of that. So they would have to know that before the results of that election. So your recommendation will set his third and fourth year salary. Then there'll be another recommendation that would set the first and second year of
Right.
whoever the next mayor is gonna be. But that would go into play before you knew who that mayor was gonna be.
And so that would
You might
be-
know who the candidates are at that time.
And so that's set by the council then at that point in time.
Yes,
There may be a committee that recommends it, but it becomes set by the council.
correct.
And you may be outside your
And
legal
the
realm here.
council would,
Yeah.
and I believe council would set that though before they knew who
Correct, because
they might know who the candidates are, but before they would know who the mayor is. It was done a little bit different last time because of the change in government.
right, we had to set a salary. I mean, again, I was part of that debate. That debate went all the way from $2,000 a month to over $10,000 a month. That was the range of suggestions by the different council members. It was all over the place. And we chose what it is now, 8,000 divided by whatever 12 is. So 80,000 divided by 12.
Yeah,
Whatever that-
because it's 80,000, or whatever that works out to,
Whatever
yeah.
we did. So again, I I would hope that if we decide as a group to raise the mayor's salary, and we haven't discussed the city council yet, we understand that that's not setting the bar for the next mayor. At least I hope that's not the case. But then I come back to, I keep falling back on this. I mean, everybody deserves a pay raise, but we started this out with 80,000 with not a lot of knowledge. It's very evident that he is working his butt off. I'm hoping that when we're all said and done, and as a group, when we decide what a fair salary is, that we also make a presentation to the council saying, we think there's room for the mayor to, or the mayor to look at an administrative assistant. And at that time, I wrote the wording down, I would like to have it, I wrote that down. Maintain his current salary. If an administrative position is created, it would be appropriate then to go back and revisit the mayor's salary.
So looking at overall cost to the taxpayers.
Yes, exactly. Would we become more in line with some of the, when I throw out Caldwell, I know Caldwell's a unique situation, I throw that one out. But we become more in line with a mayor who's making $30,000, $40,000 a year and a city administrator who's making, honestly, a whole lot more. You said, you said, or somebody said, you'd like to be cutting ribbons.
Yeah.
Well, you want a mayor to do more than just cut ribbons. But you want a mayor who's overseeing staff and guiding. Because see, I see the mayor as a CEO, not a city manager. As a manager, I see him as a CEO. He sees the big picture and communicates that to the public. Whereas the rest of the department heads and the city administrator, the public doesn't hear from them. Doesn't need to hear from them a lot. You know, Amy doesn't want to be on the front page of the newspaper.
That's one of the things that there is a city public media manager or whatever that takes care of it, and that's normally the person that the public sees. After hearing what all the mayor is doing, and I understand he's setting everything up, starting from scratch, I can see why he's not doing that more publicly, and there's still that person in line, but there's still, I don't think a lot of people know that and see that as the public,
Right.
general public, so.
Kevin, you're pounding your calculator. What thoughts do you have?
I was just trying to calculate his hourly wage if he's working 60 hours. He's talking about how he's working 60 hours a week. It seems like a lot for what he's doing. I mean, that's kind of absurd. I never would have thought 60 hours a week for the mayor would be what he's doing. You just don't see it. So I was just running some quick numbers. But
Yeah. I don't think it's 15, what is it, 15, 20 bucks an hour?
I didn't get that far. I forgot how to calculate it.
I
It's been a long day, yeah.
I did base it off 40 hours a week of $38.76 per hour.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And again, that 60 hour a week is self-imposed.
Right.
It's self-imposed. Other cities, the mayors, was very good friends with the mayor of Moscow, Dan Lambert, or Lambert was the last name, not Dan, it's escaping me right now. But he had a city manager, city administrator, who was, at his retirement, was making $150,000. The new position he just created was advertised at, I think, like $115,000, $120,000 when they opened it up to the public. And the mayor's job was to go to the AIC meetings, to go to the state meetings, in communications, be the face, and give direction to the council or try to influence the council. That's why I asked that question. Do you know what direction your council is going into? And it sounds to me like he wants to take a more proactive role in trying to get the council to see his way.
Persuade.
Persuade, I guess that's the word I'm looking for, persuade maybe. I could be wrong on that, but it just opened that conversation. So what is everybody's gut feeling here? I'm gonna just take a straw poll.
Something I wanted to touch on real quick is seeing I think it's very refreshing to hear when he talked about his use of personal funds. and how he doesn't use city money at all. Because when I think of government, I think of politicians who take my tax dollars and run rampant with them. So I think for him to be using his own money and feel like he's being fairly compensated, that says a lot for what he does and who he is. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a consideration to touch on and talk about.
Well, my thought was he had mentioned that there was about a $400,000 a year savings in salary. Is that from city manager, from restructuring? Was that eliminating any positions in the city, or do you know?
All the above.
Wasn't that from the salary, getting rid of the city manager, difference between the
It would-
mayors and the
It would be
city manager?
partly from the difference between the city manager and the mayor's salary. There was a restructuring that eliminated a higher level manager position. But I think probably also some of that savings is not just related to the personnel budgets of that department, but then the additional savings that come from not having the positions, such as like travel and training and benefits and.
Right.
Because I think those are really the two major changes that have happened.
Right.
I don't think there's been any other positions removed.
And keep in mind, 400,000 sounds like a lot, but in a $60 million budget.
Yeah, it's nothing.
No.
It's nothing.
Yes, our city is roughly a $60 million budget, is it?
It would be if we didn't have some major capital projects going
Right.
on, yeah.
Right. So it's much more than that with a major capital.
Right,
But
yes.
we used to always say, you can say 92 million, but it's really 60.
Yeah, our last couple of years' budgets have been around the 90 million mark
Right,
because
but
of
those
the
are capital
plant
projects.
constructions going on.
We are $60 million. So, that is a CEO, that position there is a CEO of a fairly successful business. If your revenue is $60 million a year, you're running a very successful business. And so I keep coming back to that. It's not our position to tell him to get help, but I want to be careful that we don't encourage him not to get help by paying more money and encourage him to work more hours. I don't think I'll say it for his health. That's not healthy. Not healthy to keep maintaining that type of a work schedule.
That tempo can do a lot. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You should never say by time, just shut up and say nothing. So, comments. What are your thoughts? You got any right thought, Brett?
I did some homework, going out and looking at the different, like from the census, looking at the current pay scale, what it equals out to, how much it's costing each year for the taxpayers, stuff like that, because that's basically what it comes down to. People want to know how much what are we getting for our money? And then comparing it to the median household income. That's why I was curious what the median household income is in the other cities versus what they're paying. Because it comes down to budget, and if it's there, and if there is no one's telling the mayor he has to go out and do 60 hours a week. No. He could do 1 hour if he wanted. I think it's fabulous that he's doing more. But, so learning that we're basically setting his third and fourth and it's just for him, changes kind of the way you look at it. Because if you're looking at it saying, okay, well, this is how much it's costing and we've got all this other stuff that needs to be done, what are the taxpayers getting for their money? Well, if he was only doing an hour worth a week, it's not worth 80,000. He's doing 60, it changes the computation of it, so.
I think a lot of the public doesn't know how hard he works.
Correct.
And again, I go back to, if I owned a business in the valley that was a $60 million business, I'm pretty sure I'd be making more than $32 an hour if I was the owner of the business. But then I would also have a staff of probably people underneath me, several, like we have here, managers and everything. But again, it's the CEO. The difference though, and the difference between private business and public business is the fact that a public is a for-profit business.
Yep.
A city's not a for-profit operation.
Correct, it's more like a nonprofit.
Right, I mean, he can lose money and still get reelected.
Right.
You know, in the real world, you're not profitable, your business goes out of, you go out of business. Straw poll, just asking without making we will not make this an agenda item until next week, but hopefully we can have more depth thoughts. On the mayor's salary now, what are your thoughts? I want to be careful I don't make this an agenda item by asking the wrong, direct you in it. Your thoughts, Darlene?
I would probably cut it in half, simply because he doesn't need to be working that many hours. And you can't go, and once we go up, the next person is setting in line for it.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I'd keep it about the same. I don't think I'd change much, plus or minus.
Okay.
I would keep it the same or propose a slight increase, less than 5%.
And I would keep it the same with additional wording that if the city manager position was, city administrator position was created, that the council then comes back and revisits
Yeah.
the salary level.
I think that is the hard part, or where I'm conflicted, because if there is not a city administrator, then I feel like he is being adequately compensated or could see an increase. But if there was a position created, then that would alleviate some of the work from him,
Okay.
which would then in turn be passed
Well,
on.
for a city our size.
Yeah.
And I will say this too. The next time this group ever has to do this, I think it'll be much easier because you're gonna have some kind of evaluation tool that says, hey, he hit these bogeys, he failed on this, we got this done, this is what we expected out of him, and all those things were done. Those are measurement tools.
Yeah, there's no
Right.
measurement tools.
We don't really have a measurement tool. We're sort of just, we're looking at what other cities pay. Dan's done a good job, I believe, and I think he'll continue to do a good job. Circling back to city councils, that's another toughie. In my mind, it's another tough issue because we were making $500 a year for a long time, and then we got to pay the city manager. The city manager proposed a raise to $700. The city council had to vote on it, and we did vote, which is kind of odd, but we did vote on our own pay raise. But that's how it has to be.
Yeah.
We voted on our own pay raise. Having been a counselor, Dan hit the nail on the head. There are counselors who cruise through, who don't do the work, don't read their packets, don't go out on the street and get their shoes dirty. There are counselors out there who are asking that hard questions, going to the department heads, doing their homework, and asking and encouraging for debate, and being independent thinkers. So you get a whole range, but that's why we have elections. That's why we have elections. I've always personally thought our council was still lightly paid compared to other city councils. I'm not sure if $1,000 a month would get you any better city councilors. I don't think it would get you any better city councilors. I don't think it would get you any worse city councilors. I would maybe next week, I possibly will make a comment that I may ask for that, and we'll vote on it, an increase, we'll vote on it as a group. And once it becomes, if there's enough to support it and we have discussion, then if there's a second. And then we'll have discussion and come back and have a chance to vote on that. But again, we haven't even, if you really look at it, we have less tools to evaluate them than we had the mayor. Basically, you know the city council better than we do because you cover it for the newspaper. You have a better feel for how they're doing. because the paper, our newspaper, excuse me, Big Country News, our newspaper doesn't have a lot of information. Any quick thoughts on that?
I think it'd be informative to kind of have like what Mayor Johnson did, where they came in and kind of like talked about what they do and why they feel that they are being paid more or less. But I know that's tricky because there's a lot of them, instead of just the one. And each one has their own independent thoughts on that, so I guess that'd be a hard metric to see, but it may highlight more than since we don't have a metric to go off, it may highlight a certain thing to see.
Yep, okay. I'm not gonna shoot that idea down, but it will be very, very hard to do that. We're definitely gonna have to make sure that's published, because we'll have a major majority and everything going on, so council and this group. Your thoughts?
Yeah, city council is a hard one. I feel like if they just got that increase, then I don't think paying them more is gonna get much different, and paying them not gonna go less. I could see a slight increase, but
When you say slight, what would you think that'd be?
like maybe $750 a month,
So you might be prepared to make that motion?
possibly. I don't feel like I know enough about the city council and the members to
Really, what you have
make
here,
that.
really what-
Looking off of other,
if you look at other city
Other
councils,
cities.
yeah, we are behind.
we're behind.
Most
This is the
Yeah.
metric we have to go off of.
Most
Yeah.
city councils, we do not pay our councilors what other city councilors
Yes.
are making. Plus, many of them have health benefits, and we don't offer that. In fact, they voted to take their own life insurance away.
Yeah. And that number is strictly just pulling from other city councils of cities this size. And most all of them are in the 11 to $13,000 a year range, where we're sitting at 9,000.
It's just comparing to the Joneses, basically.
Right, but that's like, is that what you should do? Is that what's right?
Exactly.
Possibly not, but
Right. I think it's important, Darlene, please, your thoughts.
I'm sorry, I go the total opposite end of everybody here. I think if you are city council, mayor, you are serving your community, you get the pleasure of serving your community. Any money you make in the process, great, that's a extra bonus to pay for your gas to get to and from, but you're a public servant, you've been elected by the public to represent them and lead their city, and pay scale shouldn't be super high. I mean, if we only pay our 100% disabled veterans, a 100% disabled veteran right now only gets $3,621 per month. So this is their guys that went and fought for us. You know, they're disabled, they fought for their country, they can't work anymore. What degree of disability, you know, that's 100%. What makes someone who's been elected to serve their community any better pay than the veterans?
Good, everybody's entitled to their opinion there. That's why we're a committee. That's why we are a committee. I look at Moscow as a comparative. I look at Moscow and they're right, they're $8,400. Well, this was back in 2011. And we're what are we? We're 80,
be about 9,000.
88, 89 or something. That's where we are. We are in comparison to them. I always like to say, we are a business. The city, running city government is a business. And if you expect qualified people, you need to compensate people for their services. We are a business. This is a business, and you need qualified people. Do I think $700 is going to attract more qualified people or less qualified people? No, but I have to personally say, as a city councilor, having sat there for 8 years, I felt it was an issue of respect to get my paycheck once a month after taxes. It was a way of saying thank you for the meetings you have attended, the work you have done, going out and talk to the public. Again, it's like I say, you can just be somebody who shows up, or you can be somebody who's proactive, who maybe even stirs the pot. I was a little bit known for that. okay, who go out and stir the pot a little bit, but that then generates public comment, and that's what cities need, so. I don't know, I'm torn, I don't know what I would make a proposal here. I mean, maybe I would say to 1,000, but if I made that, maybe I would not get enough votes. Maybe if you made a proposal, yours might not get enough votes. Maybe you have the one and we're all gonna vote for you. But I think we have an opportunity to do that. So, having said that, we have to set a meeting next week. What works for everybody?
Next week is rough.
Do we
Oh,
know when
God.
he's gonna be back from
No,
Alaska?
but we're gonna have to set a meeting anyway.
Yeah, I will be in Spokane most of next week for work. So my availability is limited. I can always call in most likely if it was later in the evening. Monday and Friday would be my,
You could do a Friday.
yes, I can do a Friday.
Okay. Because I think I'd love.
Cinco de Mayo, I mean, are we gonna have
Friday-
tacos?
Friday will not work for me at all. I will be on the way to Seattle. So,
Thursday is the only day that won't work for me, because I'll be up in Spokane.
What's the, can we do a Monday meeting? No.
You could do a Monday meeting,
No,
but there's
city
work
council.
session. It
So-
would have to be after
Yeah, no,
work. I mean,
that's no fun.
I can't recall if I need to be at that work session or not. I'm trying to think of what's on the agenda. I try to go to all the work sessions though, because they tend,
Yeah, that's your job.
yeah.
Okay, have it,
does Tuesday or Wednesday work for anybody? Those are both good for me.
Tuesday or Wednesday would work for me as well.
I
Tuesday or Wednesday will work for me, yeah.
I would not be available until after the evening, and it would only be for a Zoom or call-in.
What time would that be? Could you do a 5 o'clock?
Yes. Yes, I could do a 5 o'clock on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Well, I don't think I'll be under the influence of drugs on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Getting a tooth worked out, but it's early in the morning. So, can we try for the 3rd then? 5 o'clock? If we have a quorum, it's not to slight you, but if we have a quorum, we can still vote. Or, I don't know if we want to vote next week, but I do know I don't want to drag this out, this meeting, right up to the last possible day.
I think if anything, next week should be a week about bringing Matt up to speed, so he's aware of what's going on, and then, yeah, we'll go from
Well,
there.
hopefully Matt watches on TV.
Yeah, I mean, I did warn you that I think that the live stream would have had to have cut off before now.
So he's not hearing our discussion.
No.
Possibly, because they did have planning and zoning to cover tonight.
Okay,
I'm at-
so I would like for the people to ask, look down the road. The following week, the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Wide, yeah,
Yeah.
I would
wide
like,
open.
I would like to be able to call for a vote on one of those dates.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How's everybody's schedule looking 8th, 9th, and 10th?
So I do have work session on the 8th. We
Yeah,
have
but
a
I don't mean the 8th,
budget.
I don't mean the
Yeah,
8th. I
okay.
mean 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Fairly open that whole week.
I can facilitate meetings for you guys both Tuesday and Wednesday as long as they're 4 PM or later. And then Thursday, I'm more wide open.
Let's pencil in your Tuesday, the 9th at 4. That work?
So the 3rd at 5 and the 9th at 4 is a tentative.
Oh, why are we doing the 3rd at 5? Just because I said so, or because it's good for you?
That was just
When you could
to-
call in, right?
Yeah, that was just whenever I could. If we're not taking a vote, or if this is just getting Matt up to speed, then I'm not as concerned about calling in or being at the next one, since I'll be out of town.
Okay.
I think it should be
But-
more of a discussion.
Yeah, but
Okay.
if it was
All
a,
right. Then we will do it, we'll do the Wednesday at, well, then in that case, we still do 4. Let's just still do.
On the 3rd?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's do 4.
Oh,
Let's
gotta
do
keep
4
up
and
with you
then.
guys. I'm not used to this. I want to jump back over here, but it's
So
Claire's
we'll
logged
do,
into that.
we will do the 3rd, May 3rd at 4 o'clock. And then we're also gonna, at the same time, gonna schedule a May 9th meeting, and that will be at 4. And my intentions at that point in time is to hear motions, vote on motions, and hopefully we can have a recommendation that we can present along with any other comment that we want to add to the backside of that. So I guess as chair, I'm the one that has to also go do the presentation to the council, unless somebody else wants to do it. But keep in mind, when you do your presentation, you have to present what we voted on, not just go off on a wild turkey. Go off in a different direction.
Can I make certain I have this right? Wednesday the 3rd at 5 p.m.
No, change it to 4.
4 o'clock.
We would not be able to do it at 4 because this room would be unavailable and I'm unavailable that time. I have a budget meeting.
So are we saying 5
We could do it at 5
on the 3rd?
on the 3rd.
Okay.
We could do at 4 p.m. on Tuesday the 2nd, but if it's a 3rd, it would be 5 p.m.
I don't care.
So the 3rd, we'll keep it that way. Okay.
3rd at 5, yeah.
And then I have you guys also down for Tuesday the 9th at 4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
City meeting at 5. And then we'll do the 9th. And-
Yes, okay.
So the next meeting, we can go home, do homework, present it,
Any more
kind of
thoughts?
catch everybody up.
Yep. I do not know if I can get city council members here. I don't think we'll get all 5 of them.
Who's the chair for that?
The mayor, the president, it's Hannah Leckie.
Okay.
We could ask Hannah to attend.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
You
that
could.
probably streamline it a little more, that way she can speak for the group more or less.
You know, you guys can individually email the council members, email them one-on-one, any questions that you had for them. You just would, if you did that, you just would not want to
Don't
share it
group
with
mail.
each other.
Don't
Yeah.
group it.
You would
Gotcha.
come to the meeting and
And
then
then
share what
Yeah,
you
so we
found
could
out
share
through
our
that
information.
email.
Would this group like to have Hannah invited? Councilor Leckie invited and do a presentation like we just saw from Dan?
I think it'd be beneficial.
You think it'd be beneficial? You think it'd be beneficial?
Either way.
Okay. Could we ask Hannah if she would, Miss Councilor Leckie, if she would be available to attend the
3rd.
yes, the 3rd at 5? Get her in and out real quick.
Yes. If she was unavailable, would you want me to see if another council member would be available?
No. And the reason I say no so strongly is Hannah is the elected president, so if she doesn't speak for, well, she does speak for the council, at the meetings at least, from a director standpoint.
I think emailing them individually, if you guys had questions, emailing them individually, and then you could bring that
Yes.
information back to us.
Yes,
That might help as well.
yes, please do
Or
that. We're
Could
taking
be, I'll
her,
pick one,
we're taking her.
Yeah.
like pick a city council member to.
You guys can do whatever you want. Yeah, and I bet part with that is when we say email individually, like you'd want to make certain you were just emailing Counselor Lipke and not including any other counselors. Because
Right.
you don't want to potentially bait them into where they might do a reply all.
I think my preference, if you feel you want to contact one, just do it individually. And pick who you, any, all, some or none. Riverport has happy hour on Mondays, so it's a good time to take people there. Okay. I believe, okay, so we have a plan for next week, so we set our dates. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All in
Second.
favor? Good job, thank you very, very much.
I'll get it
Sorry, I
down.
missed two.